Walter P. Chrysler Museum, located in Auburn Hills, Michigan, opened its doors in the fall of 1998, giving the Chrysler Corporation a place to store and display some of its more important and unique cars from its rich history. Everything from historic cars to concept cars.
As they enter the museum proper, they're going to run into the early days of the corporation, our roots, the very first year for Chrysler, Dodge, DeSoto, and all the different divisions. It's really set up chronologically as you tour through the first and second floors. It'll take you from 1902 right up to current concept cars. We try and rotate those in and out as often as possible. And then you take an elevator down to our garage level, which is kind of an eclectic mix of race cars, muscle cars, trucks and Jeeps, and a little bit of everything. We've had a very diverse history, so we try and show a little bit of everything.
Brant Rosenbusch, the museum's vehicle collection administrator, gave Autofocus a tour of the facility, pointing out some of the more interesting and unique cars on exhibit, starting with the 1924 B70, one of the first 4 prototype Chrysler cars ever built.
The vehicle behind me is one of the most significant vehicles we have in the museum. It is a B70. That's 70 was actually the miles per hour it could reach at the time. This vehicle is built on a Maxwell chassis because it is a prototype. Mr. Chrysler was running Maxwell at the time. For its time, it was very low and more set down towards the road than many other vehicles. You can compare it to some of the other vehicles that are close to its era here in the museum. They're much taller and boxier. So it was really kind of a low, sleek vehicle. It came with a high compression engine, which was big for the time. It was a more efficient engine, burned fuel more efficiently, and 70 miles per hour was a big deal for the day, especially on the roads that they were driving on. It also was the first production vehicle to have 4-wheel hydraulic brakes, a huge safety advance at the time because people were really running on 2-wheel mechanical brakes, which really was not a good way to stop or very efficient at all. Some people noticed that the chrome on the car isn't very bright. It's because it's not chrome, it's nickel plated. They hadn't come out with chrome yet. That didn't come out until 1927. So people, when they're visiting, they say we need to polish it, and it's not the case. So this car's always been within the corporation. It's never been sold. We don't know what happened to the other 3. They got out there in the world somewhere, but it's a very, very significant vehicle. The vehicle behind me is a 1934 Chrysler Airflow. Chrysler called it the first modern automobile when it came out, and it truly was. The engineers at Chrysler redesigned the car from bottom up. It's got a tubular steel frame. They moved the axles further out to give the passengers better ride, so it was a much smoother ride. It's the first vehicle designed in a wind tunnel. So that right there is pretty significant. Actually, Orville Wright and Wilbur Wright helped design the wind tunnel with our engineers to design this vehicle. Like I said, this is the 34. It came out, that's the first year. The last year of the Airflow was 1937. As far as advanced it wasn't a sales hit. It was a little too radical for its time. Again, like I said, it has a tubular steel frame, and it's an all-steel body. And we've actually have film of this being rolled over a cliff and it rolling end over end 3 times. They came up, opened and closed all the doors, rolled up and down all the windows, started the car and drove it away. So it's a solid, strong vehicle. Well, this vehicle is one of our the favorites of the visitors that come through here. It's a 53 Chrysler Special. Basically, it's a low production car derived from a concept car. In 1952, Chrysler introduced the Special as a concept car. It looked very, very similar to this. And it was such a sharp-looking car, the president of Chrysler's export at the time, C.B. Thomas, said, "Can I have one of those?" So they built one for him also. It was actually designed here in the United States, but the body was built by Ghia of Italy. Since Ghia had built 2 of them, they approached Chrysler and said, "Can we sell these in a limited version?" And Chrysler agreed, so it's kind of a, we supplied the engines and the frames for them. It's a 331 Hemi engine in here. And Ghia went ahead and built a limited production of these. We think there's about 36 of them built. We only know of 2 or 3 here in the United States. This was actually the last car we got right before we opened, 2 days before the museum opened, when this vehicle finally arrived. And it's just a beautiful, it's very European styled, or influenced, but it was designed here by Virgil Exner in the United States, and it's just a very sharp, good-looking car. The vehicle here is a 1961 Chrysler 300G. The 300 came out in 1955 and was assigned a letter with each successive year. The 56 was a B, and so on. This is kind of the height of the Fin era at Chrysler. This is the biggest year of the Fins. As a matter of fact, the last year, 1962, they're completely gone. This was the gentleman's muscle car of the era. It was actually considered a sports car, even though it's so big. Kind of different times, they consider them different vehicles. It's powered by a 413 cross-ram induction engine with dual 4-barrel carburetors. We didn't have a Hemi engine back in 1961. We had dropped it. So the 413 was the largest engine you could possibly get. These vehicles were capable of doing well over 130 for extended lengths of period on the highway. And it's also just the height of style, the details, the instrument panel, it's got a dome on it. Just all the details in the car are just so wonderful. These vehicles are selling at auction for almost $200,000 now. It's just crazy because they're just so stylish. And I think the 1961 300 convertible is probably the best looking car we ever built. And we've had this vehicle here in the collection since about 1990. Okay, the vehicle behind me is something special from Chrysler Corporation. It's a 1963 Chrysler Turbine Car. Chrysler started working on the turbine engine in 1954 officially. The body was designed here in the United States, but built by Ghia of Italy. We had a long-standing relationship with Ghia to build our bodies. They built 50 of them. All of them look identical. They're painted identical, trimmed identical, nothing different on any of them. The engine is incredible, and we've got an engine here on display. It looks like, people think it looks like a washing machine or an old boiler or something. Basically what it is it has one spark plug for ignition. It's air-cooled engine, and as the air moves through, the turbine blades spin around and generate power, and also heat. The engine actually runs at 1,500 degrees. So they had to design a special exhaust, because the first exhausts were melting asphalt behind the car. When it drives, it sounds like, people say, a vacuum cleaner. It's a very unique, distinctive, high-pitched whistle. When the program was done, because they were imported vehicles with the expensive vehicles, to avoid huge tariff and tax problems, the company had to destroy all but 9 of them. So we have film of them running high-lows through the sides of these vehicles. Corporation kept 3. We've got one here in the museum, and the other 2 we take to shows and events throughout the year. We drive them. All 3 are running. We worked on the program up until 1979, and it just was never more efficient than a gas combustion engine. It was as efficient, but more expensive to manufacture. So that's why it just never made it to market. The vehicle we have here is the 1982 M4S. It was a dual-purpose vehicle, or several purposes. It was a test bed for Chrysler and some aerodynamic use. They actually tried to lower the drag coefficient of this vehicle to the lowest possible level. It was used at the PPG racing series as a pace car for several years. And it was also used in a Charlie Sheen movie called The Wraith. It's got a very popular following on the internet and around the world on this one particular vehicle. In the archives, we get calls and letters every week about it. They actually made several more of these. I've heard different numbers on exactly how many. So it's actually on, I think, 82 Dodge Chargers chassis at that time when they wrecked them. So no real cars were hurt in the making of the movie. It's a very neat vehicle. It opens up like a transformer almost, where the front and the back open up all sorts of ways. It's got the gull-wing doors. It's powered by a twin 2.2 turbo engine. And actually one of the goals with the vehicle was to break the 200 mile an hour mark on a 2.2 liter engine. They didn't quite do it. They hit up to 198 point, I think, 7 or something. So it was almost there, but it was a natural test vehicle for Chrysler that was, they were able to use in other uses too. What we have here is a 1970 Dodge Super Bee. Let alone being one of the coolest muscle cars with the best front ends, in my opinion, the Chrysler ever built. This car has a pretty neat story behind it. About 8 years ago, I received a phone call from a trade school in Indiana and said, "We've got this car down here that you guys gave us in 1970 to work on, and you can either take it back or we'll have to crush it." I said, "Well, what is it?" And they said, "It's a 383 4-speed Super Bee." So we pretty much got in the truck and drove straight there to get it. When we picked it up, it was a pretty well beat up vehicle. It had been in a trade school. It had been taken apart and put back together a couple times, I believe. The seats were wrong in it. It had kind of a rough life, but it had less than 400 original miles on it. So we brought it back down here to Detroit and finished it in our shops. One of the neat things on the car is it's B5 blue, but even after all these years, it had the original build sheet behind the back seat, which was incredible that it was there. Probably less than 10 of these like this were built, and then again, this car, less than 400 miles on it. And we were lucky enough that the folks over at Mopar, our aftermarket parts group, supply many of these parts. So this is kind of their showpiece that goes off to the Mopar shows, where it's the dog dish hubcaps, the wood grain inlay that's on the inside of it, the wipers, a lot of different things. The Bs themselves and the C-stripes are all things that Mopar supplies. So it kind of worked out great that got a free car, got some free parts, and got some free help, and got a car put together, and it's just a really neat vehicle.
At Detroit's International Auto Show, it's the concept cars that generate a lot of excitement, and the museum has several Chrysler concepts on display, including a few that were so popular they became production models.
Our earliest concept cars we have here are from 1941, and they're built just to draw dealership traffic. This is before the auto shows came around much. So those were built just for dealership traffic. The modern concept cars, the ones you see now and for the last 20 or 30 years, they're really design exercises. They're a chance for us to let our designers go crazy, do something radical. But from those cars, they'll take the grille, they'll take the headlight pattern or the basic outline of the vehicle, whether it be its height, its width, or something like that, and integrate those into the passenger cars, the ones you can buy. But it's really just a chance for the designers to be creative, think out of the box, and really, but we do try and bring some of those into the passenger car market. One of the exceptions to the rule was the 1989 Dodge Viper. We built that as just for a concept car for the Detroit Auto Show, but the reaction was so good to it that we ended up building the Viper and are still building the Viper today.
After revisiting the history of Chrysler, one can't help but wonder about the present and future state of the company, given the economic woes faced by the entire automotive industry.
Well, right now, as everybody's been reading the newspaper and seeing on television, the whole industry is having a lot of problems. We're doing what we can to get through those problems. We're working with the government and putting together a master plan. I know that a lot of the folks over in design right now are really busy designing some pretty cool things, and the whole company, everybody that's here is gearing up towards getting through the economic downturn. It really, I think it would help if some of the folks from Washington came in and looked around and see what the auto industry has given to society as a whole. I think it would make a big difference.
The museum is open 6 days a week. Its hours are 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tuesday through Saturday and noon to 5 p.m. on Sundays. For more information, visit www.chryslerheritage.com.